Welcome everybody to this community conversation on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. My name is Wei Tai Kwok, and I am a volunteer along with 16 other people in the community who have come together to be part of a new DEI committee established by the City of Lafayette. Yay! I would like the other 16 members here to stand and be acknowledged. All the hard workers who have put today together, thank you, as well as our staff liaison, Jennifer Wakeman, fantastic support. We'll do with that too. Thank you so much.
Go Jennifer.
And the mayor's here too. We'll get to the mayor.
And the vice mayor.
So a little bit of background on this committee. It was just formed only 90 days ago at a meeting of the City of Lafayette's Equity and Inclusion Task Force. And that is a task force led by Mayor Susan Candell and Vice Mayor Teresa Geringer. Thank you for being here today. And in that meeting, which established this volunteer community group, it was asked that the community step forward and actually take the lead to help guide the city to tackle this difficult issue that is before us. To create greater inclusion, equity and inclusion in our city. So let me repeat that. The mayor said, it's up to us, the community, to lead the city, right? So, and to look for our guidance and involvement. So this is not an easy task by any means. It's gonna be difficult. And so we'll need everybody's help here and everybody's involvement. We'll need your voices. We'll need you to speak up, speak your truths. We'll need your volunteerism and to share what's going on. The initial group of 16 volunteers is looking for more volunteers, and that's why there's a clipboard going around with email opportunities to write your name legibly, so that we can contact you afterwards. Okay?
We'll find them anyway.
We'll find you. Jen will find you anyways, if you scribble something down. But anyways, tonight is our first opportunity. This is the first event that we've decided to put together to pull together voices of the community who are working on DEI. And I'm very excited that 6 groups will be giving a presentation tonight, each briefly, to share what they're doing on this topic. And we'd also like to invite members of the public, all of you, to there'll be plenty of ample time afterwards to also share your stories, your views, whatever might have inspired you from today's conversation. And we do hope that this will be a safe place to have a conversation, and that you will all be inclined to speak up and share your truths. So tonight we are very delighted to have Lene McFadder-Harris with us today to lead and moderate our discussion. Lene is the newly appointed Director of Student Support, Equity and Inclusion at the ACALANES Union High School District. Be leading the discussion with the 6 groups from now until about 7 o'clock. She'll tell us when the public will be invited to make comments. There's going to be a microphone here for you to come up and ask questions, make comments. And at 7 o'clock, we will then open it up to everybody to have a discussion until 7:30, which is when we will adjourn and go down to the brewery, Highland Brewery, for a drink, if anybody's really hot. So with that, let me say also that we are going to record. We are recording tonight, at least the first hour until 7 o'clock. So if there are anybody who make a comment that you don't want to be recorded, let us know and we won't publish it afterwards. But anyways, let me turn it over to Lene. Thank you.
First, I want to say I am so appreciative that you are all showing up as hot as it is and willing to sit out in the sun for something that you really truly believe in, and that this shift is really starting to happen in Lafayette, starting with the position that I'm in. Who would have thought that a district would have a Director of Student Support, Equity and Inclusion in our community? My hope is that as you listen to the 6 presenters today, and I'm sure there are people who are sitting here who are not on this list that are doing some amazing things, that you start thinking about what else, right? What else? How can I help? How can I support? What am I doing that ties to that? because there's a lot happening here. And a lot of times we're not even aware of what's happening. And so the fact that y'all put this together so that we can start thinking about, oh my gosh, how do I tap in? How do I let my neighbor tap in? How do I let my community know what's happening here? How do I let other communities know what we are doing here? So that we can have the environment for our kids, for ourselves, for the next generation that we all hope to see. When we had that meeting in May, we had a vision of what it would look like, feel like, and what we'd be doing if we truly had inclusion here. Not just race, across class, across everything. So we, across ableism, ageism, special education. Everything is included in equity. It seems to get put in boxes. So today, like, push yourselves to be thinking about, what does this look like for me? How can I tap in? Because this has to be a community effort, not just the schools, not just the mayor's office, not just the police, not just the fire department. It has to be the people who live and breathe in this community to embody all of it. All right, so show some respect to our first speaker. Coming all the way from Town Hall Theater. We have Denise Altafford. Did I say it wrong?
Yeah, no, perfect.
That's my gift to you.
Thank you. Much appreciated. Hi, I'm the treasurer of the board of directors, and I'm also a costume designer. I'm not a public speaker. I have everything we've been doing written by Dennis, our managing director, who is on vacation. So bear with me, but we've done a lot, and I have been involved in all of it. So I have this whole thing. Town Hall Theater, both the building and the organization, has been a cultural hub for our community for generations. That's why it's vitally important to us to make sure that everything we do as an organization, from our educational classes, to our main stage productions, to our musical features, to our engagement programming, to how we run our day-to-day operations, is done with inclusivity and equity as central elements. In this last year, we've been afforded an opportunity to stop and evaluate where we can and must do better. We have dedicated ourselves to moving beyond performative gestures of inclusion to actual systems of change. We're very aware that simple solutions don't exist and that equity is not something you can rapidly achieve. It's an ongoing process and a journey. Through our journey, we've established that training is essential to our growth and therefore have retained a facilitator to guide us through our operational self-reflection, trust building, creation and comprehension of shared language, and goals centered around lifting up equity and equality in our programming and performances. We're committed to doing the disruptive and hard work it will take to ensure that everyone we work with and work for feels seen, valued, and heard. We're continuing with our DEIJ training for board, staff, and teaching artists. We're conducting operational audits of our offerings. We're creating a formal feedback loop mechanism so that we can hear directly from those most impacted by our work. And we are not allowing ourselves to be daunted by the distance we have before us to travel, nor be discouraged when we take a misstep. In starting out on our journey, we had to be honest about where we, the board and staff, were in our individual journeys with diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. It's important to us that we recognize that there's an emotional component to this work and that we have to meet people where they are on this journey. We can't shame people, but we can push them towards a broader perspective. It's also important to us that we manage expectations. We have to do some undoing before we can do any building to ensure authenticity and sustainability. We all agree that we want to make Town Hall the best we can be, but we can't control the community around us. Even though there are good intentions, we've found that there's still some defensiveness in the process, which is to be expected. We had to adjust to the concept of intention versus impact. That is to say that not every action, comment, or gesture is going to land for people, and that's okay. This process is an evolution, and misfires will occur. They only become failures if we don't learn from them and instead repeat them. Once we set these intentions and took stock of where we were as individuals, we were able to recognize that Town Hall was still in need of improvement, and we committed ourselves to doing the work. The next step we took was to look at the systems in place in our own organization. While we found many things we were proud of, the diversity in our acting pool and broad appeal of our shows overall, we were still able to shine a light on systems of white supremacy that we were unintentionally perpetuating and missteps we had taken in an effort to be better. This included a lack of diversity in creative teams and the kinds and types of productions we chose to present. So we asked how we can build DEIJ into the very structure of Town Hall. This was especially important for us as we have an intergenerational reach from pre-K through adult. Some of the following are actions we have taken and some we are still in the process of executing. Build DEIJ goals into our 21-22 company blueprint, which will be examined and updated every year. Schedule regular DEIJ training sessions with staff, board, and teaching artists. Make proclamation statements that are direct and clear. We suspended programming aside from education classes that were already underway from June 2020 through October 2020 so that we could better focus on strengths and weaknesses. Reconstruct our main stage programming to encourage more equity, diversity, and access in our on-stage talent as well as production staff. This includes allowing local artists to have an active voice in deciding what stories we present and how we present them. We're committing to fostering new works and working harder to invite new directors and creative designers to come to Lafayette to share their art. We set goals for diversity in our leadership and decision-making process in all aspects of operation. We're opening room in our calendar for other companies and groups to use our space to tell stories that are meaningful to them in ways that are meaningful to them. We're creating a safe and structured space for visiting artists, board members, staff, teaching artists, students, audiences, and other stakeholders to openly and constructively discuss issues, good and bad, that affect their lives at Town Hall and beyond. In an ongoing journey of this nature, it's very easy to get led into a cul-de-sac by criticism or turn around to more comfortable and familiar territory by our own emotional reactions to self-reflection and change. Here are things that we've had to remind ourselves of. Do not collect faces to put on collateral. Tokenization of an individual or group can do even more harm than not including them in the first place. Create safe and welcoming spaces. Whether we are creating space to have uncomfortable but important conversations or to share in the experience, we cannot expect new participants in our space or town until we've done the work to make sure they are included and belong. Whatever choice or action we make it intentional. There should be reason and intention behind what we do. Otherwise, we're just going through the motions. Highlight our stance on what we mean by diversity. We especially want to create space for BIPOC artists in our work, but we also recognize that diversity includes age, gender, sexuality, ability, neurodiversity, and economic diversity alongside racial diversity. Just because we can't see all of the things a person identifies as, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Diversity is not just checking racial boxes. Expect that we will get called out when, not if, we make a misstep. Be prepared to accept the setback, hear what the person calling you out has to say, and learn from it. Work needs to be done by everyone. We need to have grace toward each other that are earnestly traveling on this course with us. None of this work can occur in a silo. While each of us can feel that we are moving through this journey on our own, it can be helpful not only to check in like we're doing now, and see what others are doing. It reminds us that this work isn't in vain, and it's a wonderful way for us to share resources and continue to learn. Thank you.
Before we move to the next presenter, are there any questions or?
Yes.
Are you collaborating with other kind of nonprofits in the arts too? Because that was pretty thorough.
We've talked to other organizations, and as I said, we have a DEIJ facilitator, but nothing formal.
I was wondering, in your work, you said workshops or class?
Just repeat the question.
DEIJ workshop?
No, we have workshops for internally for our staff and our teaching artists. The board has quarterly trainings and teaching artists.
Somewhere where I
Hey, Libby,
could
can you
access the content?
use the mic? So
I'm
that
sorry.
The content of the trainings?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I could put you in touch with our facilitator who does this professionally. She's very good.
Wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Any last questions? All right,
Cool. I'm going
Tammy.
to shade. Oh,
can you talk into this? I don't know if you can touch it because of that.
I was just curious how aware you think your town hall clients, meaning like community members who come in and utilize and are part of the performances, and how much you think they are aware of the journey that town hall itself as an institution has gone through.
So what Tammy's asking is, are the participants who are coming from the community that are participating in town hall, do you think that they have awareness of the journey that you all have been on?
I think that there's a lot more that can be done to get the word out there. I mean, we've put things on our website, and we're, you know, in the building, we're talking about it. It'll come out a lot more once we are able to open up again and start our programming. We're putting together our first New Works program for the fall. So hopefully, you know, as things get going, we've just hired a new patron services manager who will be very active on social media and press releases and getting the word out. So it's been a little thin during COVID. We had to furlough almost all of our staff, and the board has been pitching in and doing what we can. So now we're starting to gear back up, and I think that there'll be more out in the public-facing side soon.
Thanks, Denise. And as we go through today, be thinking about what are some ways that participants would be able to feel it, see it, and know it, that you can share with us toward the end of our time together.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
See, she was a really good speaker, right?
Yeah.
Amazing. Don't sell yourself short. All right, next up, we have Matt Pease. He's going to talk to us about the Lafayette Chamber. Woo! They're doing some amazing things, folks. Right?
What she said. My name is Matt Pease, and I'm on the board of directors for the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also the chair of our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee that we formed a little over a year ago. This was something that we wanted to start to really investigate how the Chamber can do better in this area, because ultimately our businesses are really going to be successful if Lafayette is a welcoming community that attracts people throughout the county and around the whole Bay Area. If we don't have that kind of friendly, inclusive type of environment, people are not going to go to our businesses, and that's bad for us. As a city, what we do supports city government, it supports jobs in this area. There's a lot of things that are linked together, so this is a very, very important issue for us. So there's a couple things that we started to do after we formed the committee. One is we set a number of goals for the Chamber and the Chamber staff. And a couple of these are things such as hiring a facilitator to help work with the staff, the board, and ultimately our members on what does diversity mean to them. Now, we're a little bit behind on this due to COVID because our revenues, like a lot of businesses, went down quite a bit, but this is something we hope to do later this year, early into next year. We're also trying to recruit more underrepresented members on our board. When you look at our board, it probably mirrors Lafayette quite a bit, and that means we probably have some work to do. We do fairly well from a female perspective, but not quite as well in other areas of diversity. So trying to recruit more members on the board that represent a more diverse organization is something we're looking to do. We're also going to create a section on our website that starts to highlight some of the resources that our members can use and things that the Chamber is engaged in that helps with diversity. All of this is around member education, which we think is the most effective way to help our businesses be more effective. Now, specifically on our website, one of the things that we're trying to come up with, and we're in the process of building this right now, is a resource for our business owners where they can go to our website and they can see areas that they can concentrate on if they want to improve their efforts around diversity. So they can check off whether they're doing something fairly well. And if it's an area that they're not doing as well, there's going to be a set of resources below that they can click on there and find out more about that area and what they can do as a business. So we're looking for things like diversity training as an option for their managers, how to write job descriptions that are much more inclusive and much more broad in nature. Standardizing the interview process to make sure that there's a consistent approach to candidates. We want them to consider where they can find diverse or non-traditional type of employees as they're trying to recruit. A lot of our businesses are having trouble recruiting people right now. And so looking for these non-traditional resources to help them find people is something we think is going to be very important. How to improve their disability inclusion. Software programs that can help them analyze their job descriptions, some of their job aids to make sure that they are not biased or there's not unconscious bias that's in there. And then finally, written job interview guidelines that once again will help them make sure that they treat people equally. Finally, the Chamber has taken a very strong position with the city on its housing plan and its 20-year plan to encourage more high-density housing in the downtown core of Lafayette. We think it's important that we have a broader array of housing options. Supply will help with the demand that's out there, and it helps with some different options for people other than single-family units that are the traditional part of Lafayette. So those are the things that we're working on right now, and I'll take any questions or feedback or comments. Thank you.
All right, I know y'all have some questions for the Chamber of Commerce.
We're not as interesting as the theater people, so
I heard
understand that.
housing, I heard jobs, I heard
There we
you
go.
have facilitation. There you go. Can you use
For all
that?
that you're doing. Oh, should I go up there?
Is that okay? Yeah. We just have it so
Thanks
that
for all
nobody.
that you're doing. I have a question. In the list of work that you guys are doing, have you considered diversifying
the type of business owners that are represented in Lafayette?
We definitely want to have a more diverse board to help represent those businesses. Our staff, we're asking them that as they start to recruit new members, to try to track, are we doing a better job than we have in the past in recruiting diverse businesses? We don't have a specific number. We just think the universe, we're not that big of an organization. But if we get better every year, we think we'll get closer to that goal. So we're working with the people that recruit people, not just for the board, but also for the chamber as a whole, to try to see if we can improve our areas of diversity in women-owned businesses. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In the back. Can you talk loud?
Yes, I will. I had a question. If we're encouraging the high-density housing, what are we going to do about parking?
Well, what we're working on is a 20-year plan. This is part of our group that's called the General Planning Advisory Committee. And we're starting with housing because that's kind of the foundational part of what we have to do. There's some statutory requirements for that. But out of that comes a lot of things. Parking, infrastructure, the schools take this information and helps them think about what they're doing. It feeds into parks. So all of those ancillary issues that support the city that are around housing will all come out of that. This planning process is about a 4-year process, so it's nothing that happens overnight, but that's one of the issues that we need to address.
Thanks, Heidi. Get your steps in.
There you go.
I know the support that you're giving to businesses to diversify their actual business. I'm wondering if there's also support within the chamber if an incident happens with a customer or something in their business. Is there also a system of helping them how to go about processing
Yeah,
that?
that's a great question. In fact, this has come up before. Candidly, we don't have the staff or the bandwidth to really kind of adjudicate those situations as they come up. We have had situations that we have been made aware of. We have informally gone to the owner to make sure that they're aware of it. The ones that I'm familiar with, the owner is usually just aghast, to be honest, that it happens, and they try to take corrective action. But we don't have a formal process, to be a short answer, that really allows us to work that process. We just don't have the staff or the training for the staff to do that kind of work. Yes?
Would that be a good idea to have?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speak for the entire board. You do have to have people that are trained in this issue. There's got to be a process around it. And frankly, it changes to some degree the charter of what the chamber is all about. So given the fact that we're just kind of coming out of some financial stress that we've had with COVID, I think this is something that probably we're not going to be doing anytime in the near future would be my guess. Is there? Oh, okay. Okay.
He even handled all your tricky questions. And, you know, we have to think about when we're talking about equity, we have to think about COVID and what just happened and the impact it's had on the community, even the invisible impact. There's a lot of haves that are now have-nots pretending to be haves. I mean, and, you know, in all seriousness, it's like, how do we tend to that in a way that allows someone to acknowledge what they don't have anymore without shame? It's like, be thinking about that too. I'm just giving you all kinds of things to think about.
Good. And then you walk away.
Yep, because I'm about to bring Ruby. ACALANES Parents DEI Committee. She's trying to save our schools. There you go.
I'm going to wear a hat if you don't mind.
No, not you can wear whatever you want.
It is roasting.
It looks fabulous.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Rupi Krishnan. I'm the chair of the DEI committee at the Parents Club at ACALANES High School. We have an amazing committee of volunteer parents. You can hear me? Okay, sorry. And we're a relatively new committee at the Parents Club. We formed 2 years ago, and really our committee didn't take off until the summer of 2020. And that was in response to the changing landscape, both locally and at the national level. As you may know, there's really no roadmap to creating or running a DEI group. So we just sort of put our heads together and came up with a game plan that we thought would work. Our committee accomplished a lot of things last year, and we accomplished a lot during a pandemic, basically all virtually, which was, you know, we pat ourselves on the back for that because it was quite a big undertaking. And as I was preparing for this, I just thought I would highlight a couple of things. I could probably talk for half an hour about what's been going on at the school, but I'll just try to keep it as short as possible. So when we started, one of the first things we realized was that collaboration is key. We collaborated with the other high schools in our district, Campo, Las Lomas, Miramani, as well as the ACALANES administration. And we wanted to roll out racial equity workshops to all of the students. The workshops were delivered to all students at ACALANES as well as the other high schools. And this was significant because in the past there were events like racial equity summits and things like that, but those were opt-in events. And this was the first time that the administration and the schools rolled out something that was mandatory for all students. So you couldn't opt out, and that was amazing. Again, it was over Zoom. I mean, school was, you know, remote for the majority of last year, but I mean, we'll take it. We also worked with the school administration, I mean the district administration, to implement a reporting system to track incidences of bias. One of the key things parents wanted is the collecting data and accountability. How do you track it, and you know what happens from there? So the administration rolled out something called BIRT. It's the Bias Incident Reporting System, and it was rolled out to the schools across the district. And there's a protocol that's followed when a report is filed, and there's different details. I encourage you to take a look at it. It's fairly easy to find if you go to any of the high school websites, or even at the district website, you'll find it. We met with the district administration almost every month to discuss DEI-related issues last year. The district listened to the parents, and again, this is collaborating with all of the DEI equity groups across the district. And we really pushed for the hiring of a DEI position at the district level. We were thrilled when Dr. McFadder Harris was hired into the administration as the DEI director. That was huge. At ACALANES at the school site level, we kicked off the 2020 school year with a forum on race, similar to something like this. It was just sort of a get-together, an opportunity to discuss the importance of DEI, and it provided a safe space for members of the community to share their experiences at the school or even in the greater community. We had a strong turnout with coaches, parents, students, and alumni participation. Our committee also rolled out a series of 6 racial equity workshops to the parents of our school in order for them to also learn what the students were talking about in these cohorts during the racial equity workshops. So for the parents, these workshops took place at night over Zoom, and it allowed them to ask questions, get uncomfortable, and had various discussions on race, and it was very productive. Our DEI group also worked with the student equity clubs in executing the students' events and plans. For example, we participated in the Black Student Union and the Asian American Pacific Islanders brainstorming sessions on events that they held to celebrate Black History Month, as well as AAPI Month. We helped plan an event in advance of the June Pride Month with an engaging transgender speaker. We didn't really want to go in as a parent group and dictate, and tell the kids what to do, but we really were there to provide support. And we wanted to help them plan their students, so they have, so much going on, and they're also kids, so, their expectation of doing things is different, right? So we were really sort of there on the back end, just trying to provide whatever support we could and helping them execute these events. And pretty much everything was, virtual last year. And they were very successful. So in spite of the pandemic, I think, we made some inroads and the students made some inroads. So it was quite remarkable. A key component to our committee is the communications part. We have a communications group within our committee, and they do a variety of things. That includes weekly updates in the ACALANES Parents Club newsletter, and they do marketing and education on social media. We encourage you to follow us on Instagram. It's ACALANES DEI, and we hope to continue the momentum this school year with in-person events. And our goal is to bring more people to the table to listen and learn, since DEI encompasses such a wide spectrum. We're excited to work with everyone here and partner together. And we look forward to seeing you at some of our events. Any questions? Okay.
Yeah, is there a position similar to yours and similar to yours at Lafayette School District?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, is there a position similar to mine, a parent volunteer at the Lafayette School?
Or similar to Dr. Harris?
So
I'm a district chair.
She has a paid position. I'm a volunteer.
Right.
I'm her position for
I'm a free
Lafayette
consultant.
schools.
I'm kidding.
Right.
Yeah, so for Lafayette schools, I'm her position.
Yeah, so the elementary
Okay.
K through 8, they also have their own DEI groups, I believe at each of the elementary school levels, the middle school, and then they also all work together as well. And we
Great.
also are trying, to work with them so that it's sort of a seamless handoff when you go from elementary to middle school, and then whether you go to ACALANES or Campo or wherever, they've already had some of the, basic training or opportunity to learn more about, diversity. That's our hope, that it can just sort of be seamless and not necessarily just start at high school. It should start earlier.
Great.
But there's only one Lene, and she's
Yes,
at ACALANES
yes,
Union High School.
yes.
Well, so there's a district DEI committee for Lafayette. I'm the district chair.
But there's not a paid position.
That's not paid, yeah. So in Lafayette, though, they had positions of counselors that will also be tackling DEI work. Can y'all hear me or no?
Yes. I think I can. Thumbs up.
Yeah, we also just recently hired an assistant superintendent, and one of his buckets is DEI. Yes.
That was the next one. I didn't know it was the person was hired. And then Moraga and Arenda, just their new superintendents came out of the ACALANES High School District. And so they plan to bring the same type of trainings and coachings and stuff that they've started at the high school at those districts as well. So it should all funnel up. I mean, I say in 5 years or so, we'll see like a real shift in what's coming up and out of our community into the world.
Hi, Mary.
I thought the parent ed groups, the series was super valuable last year, and I'm just wondering if you're planning on organizing those again, or if you're planning on doing something sort of different.
So the question was, last year, we rolled out these series of 6 racial equity workshops. If we're going to do that again, we will probably try, if it's in our budget, I'm going to see what the guidance is from Dr. McFadden-Harris, but the intent is to continue those type of conversations, hopefully in person, make them more interactive so that we can bring more people to attend and, participate, or just even attend and be a silent participate, but just to be there.
For the reporting that you're gathering, what has been how many people have been reporting, and what are you learning from the data? Are the students actually reporting incidences? That one.
There are. So for the BERT system, I know for ACALANES, they have a protocol when a report comes in, it gets filed online. They have there's a certain time frame, it's like 48 hours or 72 hours where they have to respond. And there's a committee of people that are trained, on how to handle these things. And so there have been some reports that have come in, but I think because school was basically virtual last year, it was different. Some of it was sort of social media. It wasn't necessarily in person, although there may have been a few, but the data so far has been it's been low reporting.
Got it.
And we hope it stays low. I mean, ideally we don't want to have a lot of those, but it's good to be able to track it. It's good for the students, faculty, for people to be able to know that that's a resource where they can file it either with their name or they can file it anonymously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rupi. And if you have other questions about the district and what's happening in the schools, we're still going to have time at 7 to be able to flush some stuff out. Flush. All right, next up. Y'all ready? We have Allison and Nicole from an organization that I did not know existed until we had that meeting in May. Inclusion Lafayette. Who knew?
I'm Allison Hill, and when we were all wondering what we could do when the Black Lives Matter movement started, friends who happen to be present right now sent me a Facebook message from a group called Inclusive Lafayette, and I was just really impressed with their message and what they were doing, and signed up, and to discover that they're nearly all young people with just wonderful ideas. But there are in the group, I'm the one that ended up on the board, but there are other people of my generation too who are strongly supportive of what we're trying to do. So I'm going to go ahead and read our mission statement, which is one of the things that impressed me, and then I'll hand it over to Nicole to let her say how she got started on this. Inclusive Lafayette exists to encourage inclusivity in Lafayette, California through affordable, sustainable housing and land use policies. We strive to help create a community where people of all backgrounds can afford to live by combating the legacy of racism in Lafayette, the Bay Area, and the United States as a whole. To achieve this goal, we support multifamily housing.
I'm Nicole, and I'm a lifelong resident of Lafayette and a student at University of Michigan. I joined Inclusive Lafayette because I think that our community and our education need to be more diverse. The curriculum I grew up with was dismissive of racism, the history and the legacy of it. And in order for our community to learn how to combat discrimination, our schools must be able to employ a diverse and inclusive staff. The people who work in Lafayette deserve to live in Lafayette.
So a couple of the other things I was impressed with, well, many, but I won't go into them all, but you can check them on our website. We have the list there, were some of the goals, which are to engage Lafayette's community in open-minded, respectful conversation about housing and land use based on evidence from reputable sources. And another, to increase community awareness of California's housing crisis and the history of discriminatory housing policies at the federal, state, and local levels.
Another objective we have is to educate our community. Inclusive Lafayette has a book club, creates infographics, and writes op-eds to discuss the housing crisis. We also hold community forums to spark conversation and reflect on Lafayette values. We are focused on housing because cities have more power over housing and land use than any other policy area. There is also a well-established connection between exclusionary zoning laws and segregation. Although the Fair Housing Act banned discriminatory housing policies, segregation in and around Lafayette has only worsened. Lot size minimums require a buyer to purchase an expensive and large plot of land when they buy their home. These high prices exclude BIPOC, who are affected by the existing racial wealth disparity.
California's housing crisis has continued unabated throughout the pandemic. There are those who thought we just should hold off and see what would happen, and as we see, the pandemic continues on. Studies show that people earning the minimum wage cannot afford a place to live anywhere in the United States, which I find just a shocking statistic. The numbers of homeless people continue to rise as we read and see. The San Francisco Chronicle did a whole article on the subject of are people leaving the state. Some are, but not great numbers. Quite a few left San Francisco and got as far as Fresno, Sacramento, but not too many got as far as Texas. And as we are probably all really aware, home prices in Lafayette at an all-time high, which I think we all find rather amazing. So what are we going to do about this? What are the solutions?
So some of the solutions that Inclusive Lafayette focuses on are about incentivizing affordable housing. We want to allow for more housing and transit-oriented development, which is why we're looking into what's happening at the BART.
And Matt mentioned about the General Plan Advisory Committee. The city is looking at its whole general plan, particularly housing, and has done a wonderful job in trying to involve everybody, and probably most of you have been involved. There have been online meetings, in-person meetings. It's a wonderful website, Plan Lafayette, so there's lots to know and participate in. And then in terms of our group, Inclusive Lafayette, we have a Facebook page, a website, lots of social media communication, some of which is quite beyond me, but which people like Nicole are wonderful at doing. And so you can look there if you want to check on us, check with us on the various ways to contact us. It's inclusivelafayette.org. If you don't do most of that stuff, you can at least get to our website and sign up for our newsletter, which is, what, monthly? Nicole?
Yeah, it's monthly.
Yeah, and I think they do a great job with that. So you can get on the mailing list for that. And I think that's about all we have to say now, so any questions?
Any questions for Inclusive Lafayette? That's how fabulous y'all were. All right, so next up we have Temple Isaiah, Stephanie. Where are you at? There she is. Stephanie Snyder.
So hi there. Again, thank you all for being here on this crazy hot night, but also for your commitment to this work. It's really impressive to see this many people show up and let us know that this matters in Lafayette. A little bit about myself. I am a Jewish woman, a mother of 3, one with special needs, and I grew up in Evanston, Illinois, which is a very diverse town, both socially, economically, education-wise, and as many different ways as you can think. And so coming to Lafayette about 21 years ago was a bit of an awakening. About 15 years ago, I joined Temple Isaiah, which is part of the Reform Jewish movement, which you could say is more liberal in terms of Jewish, the spectrum of Jewish synagogues. It's a 900-family organization, and at its core value is something we call tikkun olam, which means to heal the world. And so we are already engaged in social action, social justice, interfaith work, and so on. It's one of our core values. But last year, when things were changing in our country and we were realizing that there was need for more work, Temple Isaiah said we want to develop our own DEI committee. And so I've been sharing that for the last year. The first thing we were tasked with was doing a self-evaluation, because we acknowledged knowing where you stand is important to knowing what's already working and where we grow. So rather than developing a series of programs, rather than having a series of events, we said we need to get to know ourselves first. Nobody in our congregation is a DEI leader, educator, or trained. So it was behooved the lay leaders to get some training themselves. So I went through an exhaustive DEI self-evaluation training that was led by our national organization, the Union of Reform Judaism. During that training, we learned about things like shared agreements and reconsidering and disrupting cultural norms. We learned about microaggressions and colorblindness. We learned about developing inclusive programmings and social justice checklists. I also then spent some time with the other experts from the union to meet with them one-on-one to learn more about how to do this self-evaluation. So I would say not too dissimilar to Lafayette. Typical US Jewry is very much like Lafayette. We call it Ashkenormative. Ashkenazi Jews are what you think of as the Eastern European white Jews. But that is changing. World Jewry, American Jewry is much more diverse now than it ever has been. At Temple Isaiah, over 50% of the families are interfaith. And so it's really important that we get to understand who we are. So it was critical that we build this working group with intention, thinking about who needs a seat at the table. A phrase that we like to refer to a lot is nothing about us without us. Meaning if I'm thinking about the LGBTQ community and what their needs are, they need to have a seat at the table. I'm not going to program for them, I'm not going to run an event for them without asking them what their needs are. So on this committee of 12 people, so on this committee we had 11 women and 1 man. Those of you who are in volunteer work, especially in the social justice kind of arena, you'll see that it's very female heavy. We had Jews of choice, which some people might think of as a converted Jew, someone who came to Judaism on their own. We had Jews of color. We had LGBTQ plus people. We had 6 of the 12 families were interfaith. 6 of the people were under 50. 6 of the people were over 50. We had 5 that were single or divorced. 2 that attended the religious school at Temple Isaiah growing up. We had Jewish adjacent people, which means someone who's not Jewish but lives with a Jewish person or is raising their family Jewishly. We had 3 people of color, 1 with intellectual disability, and 5 families that were interracial. So as a lot of people have mentioned, when we think of DEI, it's not just race, but it's abilities, it's ageism, it's economic restrictions, and so forth. So we really tried to make sure this committee was representative of the Jews in our, not necessarily in Temple Isaiah, but Jews of the United States. Okay, so the next step was, okay, we want to do this in-depth self-evaluation, and this is going to take a lot of work. And so in organizing the volunteers, I made it clear to them that this work was going to be done in phases, phase 1, 2, and 3. Because when working with volunteers, it's really important to give them an out, to let them know this is a finite amount of time, I appreciate your work effort, but now if you need to step out, you can. So the first phase of this work was doing this self-evaluation that our national organization provided. And that was part of the training that I went through. In that survey, we answered questions around audacious hospitality, meaning how welcoming we are, interfaith families and their exploration of Judaism, embracing racial and ethnic diversity, LGBTQ+ inclusion, and disability inclusion and accessibility. And so there were many, many questions, all in those different subcategories. And so our committee came together and answered the questions first on their own, and then we came back together to discuss them collectively. We wanted to be really careful about not having groupthink and create an opportunity for people to come up with their ideas independently and not feel the pressure from the group to conform. After that, we realized there were a lot of questions about Temple Isaiah that the survey didn't answer. So we developed our own subsequent survey. In this, we looked at things like membership. If we're Oshko normative, all white, and we only get new members by referring to our friends, who often happen to be white, then we're not going to have a really diverse membership. So how do we think about reaching out to the broader community through the tunnel, down the highway, and so forth? We looked at our leadership. What does our board look like? What is our policy about having non-Jews on the temple board? We looked at hiring. We saw that our senior clergy were all Caucasian, but our hourly staff were more diverse. So we have to grapple with that and learn more about why that is the way it is. We looked at our education system, all the different grade levels. What's happening? How are the kids learning about the Jews of the world, Jews of color, Jews with disabilities, and so forth. And then in our worship practice, are we being inclusive? Can people access our services? Are there physical limitations that they can't get into the sanctuary? Might somebody have difficulty moving the pages of the book and need an e-reader or something like that to help facilitate? And then just the broader community and service. How are we as members of the Lafayette community behaving? So this is a process. There's no quick check the box kind of thing. And that's something that I think also in our heavily white community, we think of when we have things we want to accomplish, that we make a task list with to-dos and we check them off and measure them and get them done. We need to recognize that this is a process. This is, the harm has happened over hundreds of years, and so it's going to take time to undo this. What we did learn was, well, quite vast, and we created a spreadsheet with over 200 goals that we hope to work on over the next couple years. We set short-term goals and we set long-term goals, because it's really essential that we have little measurable pieces and moments of success along the way. Because again, this is going to take some time. We looked to see that our values were reflected in our budget. A lot of you coming from businesses and so forth, if your annual budget isn't showing it, who was it who asked, was there a budget to hire staff to do the DEI work? If you say you really care about this, if that's one of your values, then it should be reflected in your budget. So we're doing that as well. Feedback and accountability, we heard about the BERT system at ACALANES. We're developing a system as well for reporting. And then finally, putting our goals into action, making people accountable, following up, and finding out how we can support them in meeting the goals that we've set before them. And that's what we're up to. Any questions or comments? Yeah.
Did you consider membership and changing some of the programming so that instead of it just being available to members, it would be available to the general public?
Yeah, that I will be honest, that isn't something that generally we consider. We have had experiences in the past where people have asked for our programming to be sort of like fee for service. Like, you have this great event for the teens, can my teen come? And then then it's a bit of a challenge because we have full-time staff and we have mortgage and so on. And so we can't really be a fee-for-services organization, but we definitely have, every event that we have, membership, et cetera, can be no fee. So if you have financial limitations, there is no issue at all about, you can attend every event on or off our campus for free. Yeah. Any others? Great, thank you all.
Did she say 200 goals? You make me look lazy. And I do believe that we can do that. Having the short, measurable ones that help you to know that you're successful as you're trying to get the long ones done. It's nice. So we have one more speaker. Are y'all ready?
Yeah.
This is the one I usually run from. LPIE. Come on, Anita Embleton.
I'm not here to solicit tonight. But, you know. So probably most of you have seen us around. You've certainly seen the thermometer that measures our success as you drive into Safeway every day. And we are the Lafayette Partners in Education. It's been around for more than 40 years now. Started initially to specifically fund some areas that the California schools were not being funded in, science and art and music. Since then it has grown, and our mission though stays the same, which is that we really want to support a well-rounded education for our children. So as that, it's endemic in our name that we are the partners. We are not the drivers, but we are here to be the support underneath. And I think that's very important because you guys have all inspired me. I had no idea there were so many different ways that DEI was being explored in our community, and I'm really inspired by that. So it's just a great feeling, and I think that what we want to do is to just make sure that we keep, you know, as Rupi had so much said, in the next 5 years, as the kids grow up and they become adults, that this is just in them, you know, that this becomes a part of the culture that they absolutely accept as norm. So I will just quickly give a brief overview, but just to say that LPIE is committed to supporting the well-rounded education, and the foundation of this is that everyone feels included and welcome. We support the Lafayette and the ACALANES school districts in their DEIB work and fund initiatives including expansive classroom libraries that reflect a variety of voices, the ACALANES Equity and Inclusion teacher and ethnic studies teacher, parent education, professional development for instructors, and of course we empower the parent orgs to use funds to address DEI at their respective sites. DEI is important to LPIE for the same reason it is important for the community as a whole, because it makes us stronger when we include everyone and when we learn from one another's experiences. We hope that the efforts that we fund will lead to greater understanding and a broader worldview for all of the children in our school system, as well as enriching the community as a whole. We are your partner. Thank you. LPIE.org if you just want to click the donate button.
She can't even help herself. And we wouldn't be able to do a lot without them. Like, in all seriousness, there's a lot of programs that are taking place to really help our kids learn a lot about equity and inclusion because of LPIE. Dr. Lori Watson. So I run from you and I run to you at the same time.